Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsey Berk. I'm the Executive Director of ACORN. And even more exciting than that is welcome to the ACORN Food Hub. For those who come from further afield, welcome to Middlebury and welcome to the Champlain Valley. We are nestled here between the Green Mountains to our east and Lake Champlain and the Adirondacks to our west, with some of the most fertile soils of the state underneath our feet. We are in peak stick season, and the geese have mostly finished their journey south. We just experienced the gorgeous final supermoon of the year, and most of our gardens and barns have been put to rest as we transition to the darkest nights of the year. We give thanks to the land stewards, past and present, including the Abenaki and Mohican. We give thanks to this land, its abundance and generosity, and continue to work towards a more just food shed, where everyone has access to healthy, culturally relevant foods, and the land, air, and water is respected, nurtured, and cared for generations to come. I'd like to start with a poem from a friend of mine who I met in a Food Solutions New England leadership cohort. Katie Spring is a writer, farmer, mother, and tea drinker at Good Heart Farmstead in Worcester, Vermont. She's also now at the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center, and I'm so glad we have her in that institution. This is Gathered Together by Katie Spring. I don't want to be self-sufficient anymore. How exhausting. Here, let us sow seeds together. Intertwine our roots, carry the bucket, hand in hand, together. As in to gather, as in community. Let us lighten each other's loads. Remember, we were made for this. Thank you all for being here. The theme of the night is showing up. Y'all have already done it. We hope to continue to show up for each other during this time of great turning. We're really excited to be welcoming you all tonight to our brand new to us Food Hub space. As you can see, we're still transitioning from our old space just a few warehouse days down. Although we might be squeezed in tonight, we really wanted to take advantage, as this will be the only year we can host this event here. We're building out the office and food shelf. The CBOEO food shelf will be right here. I'm starting tomorrow. So we're really squeezing you guys in. And tonight marks a special transition in our growth as an organization. We're so pleased to have so many friends, partners, volunteers, and new faces here to root us on in this next stage. I want to give a big thanks to CBOEO and Feeding Champlain Valley, our roommates in this warehouse, for sharing their space with us and being such amazing partners as we've reimagined and moved towards the food system we are all craving. Thank you to Janice from Frog Hollow Farmstead and the Farm Stand Cafe for nourishing us with your gorgeous food this evening. Yeah. And for come on out, Janice. You can hear from Janice later, but you can just wave to everyone. Yay! And the delicious beverages from Shacksbury, Aquavite, Hogback Brewing, Last Resort Farm, and Shelburne Vineyard. We're so lucky to have so many amazing food and beverage producers in this region, and you all know that. A huge thanks to our volunteer board of directors who serve on various committees throughout the year to support our staff and mission. Could our ACORN board of directors please stand up? Thank you. And last but not least, our team, who is small but mighty, Abby, Lila, Alicia, and Jess. Can you please stand up? And for some general housekeeping, there is a toilet, there's a bathroom back there. There's also a porta potty outside. We knew this was going to be crowded, so we're hoping the front half of the room can use the porta potty and the back half can use the toilet if you need to in the middle of this presentation or the stories that are coming later. The porta potty is brand new today. It's very clean. I just used it. I promise it's very clean. There's Food Hub shirts for sale. If you're envious of any of our cool Food Hub shirts, they're next door. And there's also some Migrant Justice sweatshirts. And more information on Migrant Justice, an organization that you'll hear more about later this evening. There's also a 2-question exit survey that we'd love for you to fill out for Alicia's AmeriCorps Eco program. That is kind of a federal funded program, so maybe important. So Alicia, put your hand up. She'll be in charge of that at the end of the night. Okay, so now on to the agenda for the evening. What are we doing here?
They wouldn't do it.
So we're going to learn about our whirlwind of a year. 2024 was pretty hectic for us. We expanded our programming, we expanded our staff, and we expanded our infrastructure. You're also going to hear from a stellar lineup of storytellers from across our food system on this topic of showing up. We're also going to continue to eat and drink and make new friends because we know this work doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes all of us. So please continue to meet each other. If there's folks here that you don't know, and there's folks here that I don't know, which is amazing, please come and say hi at the end of the evening. So ACORN's mission, for those of you, if this is your first ACORN Annual Meeting, welcome. If you've been coming for 15 years, welcome back. Our mission is to promote the growth and health of food and agriculture in Vermont Champlain Valley, and we do that by providing support to our farmers and food producers, engaging in food education, and ensuring access to healthy food for all members of our community. We've been doing this work for at least 15 years, primarily as a network. We've developed relationships through our programs such as the Tour de Farms, Viking Farm Tour, the Guide, the Local Food and Farm Guide. There's copies of them here if you haven't gotten one yet this year. It's a huge resource to connect directly to farmers and food producers in your area, our Pharmacy Food is Medicine program, and our new Farmer Climate Network and Food Hub. You'll keep hearing about the Food Hub throughout the evening, so we want to make sure everyone has an understanding of what that is. So we physically brought you here tonight to show you, because we know that it's kind of like an abstract concept, and it's something that we wanted to do for at least 12 years, but we never quite had the resources, the time, or the community buy-in to do it until COVID happened. And then the world saw how precarious our global food system is, and all of a sudden had the time and some grants to start researching and investigating how we can actually support a local viable food system. And one of the main solutions that we found that ACORN as a grassroots organization could help out with is the actual physical movement of food. So after about 2 years of doing some research and writing grants, we were able to hire our first Food Hub staff person and then open our doors in fall of 2022. So I'd like to welcome up our first Food Hub staff person, our Food Hub Operations and Logistics Manager, Jess Purks, to explain a little bit more about the Food Hub.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lindsey. So it's true. We were led from discussions like this with farmers and from the data that we gathered that farmers noticed there were some unmet needs in this community, things that they could use that would really support them in their farm viability. And what we heard from farmers is they needed help with sales and marketing, storage, and distribution support. So in the fall of 2022, when we moved into the warehouse that we share with CVOEO, the original warehouse 2 doors down, we launched a core set of services to those ends. We opened up our ACORN Market, which is an online shopping platform for wholesale buyers of all kinds to purchase local food from over 50 different food producers. It didn't start with 50, but we've been growing pretty fast. And we also opened our walk-in coolers and freezers to producers that needed more storage for their products as they scaled their businesses. And lastly, we opened up our delivery van. We do our own deliveries, and we are a delivery service for hire. A Rutland area producer that needs their products taken to the Middlebury Co-op will take it there. And lastly, we opened up the doors of the Food Hub to cross-stocking. That's an industry term that really means that a producer can come, bring their products to our Food Hub, store it for a little bit, so a distributor or another customer can come take it somewhere else in Vermont or beyond. And that's all of those services work to make local food more accessible in our community. And like Lindsey said, it really has been a whirlwind year. Across all of our ACORN programming, we've experienced a lot of growth and momentum, not just in the Food Hub. But it all started off this spring when we outfitted our beautiful new delivery van. It's a Mercedes, pretty fancy. We outfitted it with refrigeration, so we could say yes to larger and more distant buyers while maintaining the cold chain and food safety on the road. We also strengthened our relationships with the other food hubs in the state, and for the first time formalized a Vermont Food Hub community of practice and saw more hub-to-hub purchasing than ever before. The delivery van also allowed us to serve more school buyers than ever before. We moved products from over 27 producers into 4 school districts this year. And lastly, last week, we just kicked off the winter version of our pharmacy share. We're all excited about this extension that brings local food to people year-round. And so I'm going to take a second to talk about the ACORN market because it's such a big part of what we do. We have a few set of services in the Food Hub, but the ACORN market is the one that consumes most of our team and brings a lot of joy to our work. It's because we connect over 50 producers to new markets through this platform. And this year alone, we saw over $140,000 in local food purchasing on this site. And that's double 2023. And this is before we brought on a dedicated salesperson with a team of less than 2 full-time equivalents doing this work. And when compared to other food hubs with more resources and bigger budgets and larger teams, we're right on track with those guys. So we're pretty stoked about our progress this year. And if you're wondering where all this food is going, here's my nice little map to show you. So most of our buyers, and our list is growing, reaches north as far as Jeffersonville and as far south towards Manchester, towards Danby and Middletown Springs. And then even further, by tying into the existing network of food hubs around the state, we can move food efficiently across the state and into wider New England. I'm going to hand it back to Lindsey so she can introduce the ACORN strategic plan.
I know everyone came to hear about our strategic plan and feasibility. How holds your excitement? So not only was 2024 a whirlwind for us, but the last 5 years have been pretty hectic for ACORN. We've grown 550% in the span of 4 years, which is pretty solid growth for a small grassroots organization. And we didn't have a framework of how to go through that growth. We've done a lot of focus groups and surveys and meetings with farmers and food producers and buyers and trying to figure out what the thing is and letting that guide us with instinct. But this year we took a pause and we said, well, like, what are we doing and how are we going to get there? And we were able to hire 3 consultants, thanks to a few grants, to help us understand where we're going. So what we found with the feasibility study, now you can stay on the hot seat. With the feasibility study, we learned that we're going to go through some incremental growth with the Food Hub. We were trying to figure out what should the Food Hub look like for this area. If you've seen one Food Hub, you've seen one Food Hub. Like, they're all very different around the state. And Food Hub people in the room, you know what I'm saying. So you can consider the old warehouse our first phase. We just had the warehouse. Now we have a meeting space, we have some office, we're growing our infrastructure, and we're trying to raise money to rent another warehouse. We'll have 2 warehouses because we know we're going to need more cold storage and we know we're going to need to move more food. So that's the second phase, we're in it. The third phase is a really beautiful, big dream of a multi-partner stakeholder space that has different businesses and organizations with a community commercial kitchen, a co-working space, an actual event space. This is going to disappear tomorrow as an event space. A place where we can have workshops and, you know, cooking classes, a community garden, a real food hub where it's not just about the physical movement and market of a food, because we know that the food system is more than just a market. That's a really beautiful goal. We have architectural renderings. Our architect is in the house. Shelly, where are you? There she is. And it's going to take a lot of community buy-in from more than the folks that we've already talked with. It's a $7 to $8 million capital campaign. So we're going to really need community support if that's what the community wants. We're not going to attempt it unless we hear from the community that this is what you all want. So we know that's a multi-year thing. We're hanging out here for the time being, but if you know of anybody or if you're interested in like talking to me about what that future dream could be, please let me know. Fred from Economic Development is here. Fred, where are you? There he is. He just told me tonight there's another piece of land that's available. We've identified the few parcels that make sense. We understand what a big lift it is, and we need help to do it. So that's all I'm going to say about the future. We're not committing to anything yet. We're really happy to be in this space. For the strategic plan, we identified 4 goals. 2 are internal, 2 are external. This one is our guiding North Star. We want to get more local, healthy, affordable food into more people's homes, more people's bellies, beyond the CSAs, beyond the co-op, beyond the farmers markets. And we're doing it. We're doing it with our pharmacy food as medicine program. You can see what a share looks like on the left. There's bulk spinach going to our K through 12 schools on the right. We know we can do more of this if we have more capacity. We've got our salesperson, Abby. She's going to take on next year to trying to get more sales into our institutions, into the college, into more stores, because we know that this work is important and we need more people to do it and more infrastructure. But this is really our guiding star. The next goal is increasing market access. We know that to keep working lands viable, they need access to markets. We also know this is really hard right now with the real estate development being what it is, pushing pressure on small farms, the consolidation across the food system. Think of Amazon buying Whole Foods. Distributors are consolidating at every level. I was just having a conversation in the warehouse with some food producers who are frustrated with their distributor because their margins are so high. And we can do this work as a nonprofit because our margins are a lot lower. We can raise money through philanthropy and foundations and grants to keep the markups low, to keep food more affordable, and to not eat into the farmers and profit. So here we have some actual, real, tangible examples. We've got Burnt Rock Farms supplying hundreds of pounds of potatoes to a K through 12 school. We've got Blue Ledge Farm. Hannah's in the house. Hannah, there you are. And Greg. Hi, Greg. They have Dole and Bailey, which is a private distributor, come and pick up their cheese and bring it to Boston, which is amazing. And then we've got Maple Meadow Farm, who drops off their eggs here for Farm Connects, another food hub in the district, in our food hub network, that picks up their eggs and brings it further afield. So this is literally how we're getting farmers more market access. And this is just to show you what's like really hard. The supply chain is really complicated, but this is a very simplistic way of showing that. And it's not the sexy side of the food system, but it's super important. Next slide, please. Our goal number 3 is to continue our partnerships with our community members, our nonprofits, other businesses and institutions. Foundations are going to continue to support us financially. State agencies like the Department of Health and the Agency of Ag have been super, super supportive. Of course, we center all of our work around farmers and food producers. And then we've got regional communities of practice for pharmacy and food hub, which is other food hubs and other pharmacy programs around the state are working together to streamline their work, to learn from each other, and to figure out how to advocate for more funding at the state level and with other fundraisers. This is all work we've been doing for 15 years as a network, and we're going to continue to do it because we really need all of these different parts of the community to be part of this work. And our last goal is for ACORN to be a financially sustainable organization. We've seen tremendous growth, and we're trying to figure out what our fundraising strategy is. And what we're pinpointing this year is looking at family foundations and major donors. We don't know what's going to happen with grants next year, and we need all of you. So this is really, if you believe in this work, you'll hear from Jonathan, the chair of our board, in a few minutes about how you can contribute. And now I'm going to bring up Neely, our treasurer.
I've been the treasurer of ACORN since fall of 2021. And I like working with the numbers because I think they tell us a story and they help us put our ideas and visions into a concrete plan for the future. So the story that these numbers tell, Lindsey and Jess have already told a little bit, but you can see here in 2020, ACORN was a little bit in hibernation mode and reset mode during the pandemic. And then 2021, that fall was the first time that we had an employee in our history. Of course, there were 20 years before that of people, volunteers and contractors and consultants helping to build us to that point. But and then since then, we've added our other 3 employees and an AmeriCorps member right now. And so that's been a pretty tremendous growth. 2022 was when we first started planting the seeds of the food hub and exploring the feasibility of it and setting up the online market. 2023 was when we really fully kind of opened the doors. And now 2024, as you can see, is our biggest year yet. And the expense number will go up because we're not done spending money this year. We'll probably break even. But yeah, you can see that big growth. We've also grown through the work of a lot of great volunteers and workers, the tour de farms over the course of these years. So I think it's gone for bringing in maybe like 16,000 to 50,000, something like that. So these two graphs show where is our money coming from and where is our money being spent. This green slice of Food Hub sales, almost all of that money goes back to the farmers. So it's kind of just being passed through ACORN. The money that's really funding the overhead of the Food Hub is coming largely from grants and donations. And then we have our two fundraising event sort of things. So the Tour de Farms is bringing in a good chunk of revenue and the local food guide. And then this is really what we're looking to grow, especially as we enter sort of an uncertain terrain around funding and federal grants and foundations and not knowing what's going to happen there, and knowing we want to expand the Food Hub and continue to grow our local food system. We're really going to need to see those donations and sponsorships grow. So if you're interested, that's a great way to contribute. Yeah, and then just on the expense side, I just want to point out that Food Hub is like an ever-growing slice of what we do. But also we want to keep growing that pharmacy slice as well so that we can serve more people with that. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Neely. It was such a relief when Neely came forward a couple of years ago and said she wanted to be our treasurer. Jonathan was our treasurer for a number of years, and Jonathan's also the chair of our board. So, so what's next for 2025 is we're looking at doing some more state level advocacy. We really want to try to get Food Hubs on a line item as a budget in the Agency of Ag or BHCB. We don't want to rely on year-to-year grants that are really uncertain. We're all in competition with each other. It doesn't make any sense. So we're going to start pushing for that. We are going to expand our infrastructure. We're writing grants. We've already maxed out our walk-in cooler, our walk-in freezer, and our cargo van. So we're hopefully doubling all of those entities. And we will hire more staff because we need more staff to move more food. So that's what we're looking at next year. And now I'd love to bring in some community members to give us some testimonials about how the Food Hub is working for their businesses. So Janice Frankie, the chef from tonight, from Frog Hollow Farmstead and Farm Stand Cafe in Hubbardton and Castleton. What's it called? The cafe's in Hydeville. Hydeville. Does anybody know where Hydeville is? No. Okay, Scott. All right, without further ado, Janice. Hi.
So the Food Hub for us has been really pivotal to bring local food to our community. There's this sort of like desert of local food in the Castleton Hubbardton area. There's no deliveries like south of Route 7. Everybody's like, you live where? Just like you guys all did. So, yeah. So for us, it's twofold. We're both buyers and producers. We make crackers and granola and some apple butters and some other things that we distribute ourselves mostly. And so that's pretty difficult when it's just me, my husband, who has a full-time job, and then we have a couple of part-time people, but we also did this really crazy thing and opened a cafe last year. So, because we were bored and didn't have enough time. But the reason for the cafe was to really open our community up to local food and the importance of it, both from health benefits, but also, you know, building an economy in an area that's pretty low income and really struggling just in general. And so we, I think, are really grateful for all of them for a few reasons. Number one, the community that this hub builds between farmers is really pivotal for two people that came from the city and started a farm and then started a cafe. And so it's been really great to have resources like Scott and Becky and Jess and Connor and even Lindsey when we're struggling, like, why are my sheep doing this? Or why is my spinach not growing? Or any of those things, but also bringing food to our community in an area that really struggles to get local food and really good, healthy options from prepared food. And then also distributing for us. It's really easy for us to put our stuff on the market and have our crackers and other things go throughout the state to where they deliver and not have to have my husband who is juggling both farm duties and a full-time job while he's delivering our stuff across the state. So we're really grateful they're here and very grateful for all the support that they give us.
Wow.
Next up, we'll have B. Smiley from Mini Factory in Bristol.
Hi, I'm Bee Smiley. So my first business was Bee Smiley Preserves. We make honey sweetened, no added pectin jam. Started the company actually in Seattle, but I am from New Haven and moved back in 2015. My mom has been on the board, I think from the beginning. And so I've had a front row seat to watching the organization grow and doing a lot of brainstorming sessions with her. With some of my ideas, and definitely year one of the hub, I looked at what was available a lot, but I think I was in year 1.5 of Mini Factory and wasn't, just didn't have it in me to kind of add on another supplier. At the time, I was working really closely with Footprint Farm, and we continue to work really closely with them. But Mini Factory is a grocery store, it's a restaurant, it's a coffee shop, it's a community hub. We'll talk more about that later on. But in Bristol, when I opened Mini Factory, the farmers market was still not back. It's since been revived. And the places to buy local food are the beverage center, actually. So you go in and get your liquor and some local eggs and some meat, which is really cool. And then, you know, the cheese selection in town is poor. So I was really excited to offer groceries. Always thinking about how to kind of tell the story of how to use preserves, which we do at Mini Factory. But cheese and, well, you know, mustard, all these things go on the table with jam. As we've, you know, I've kind of gotten my feet under me more at Mini Factory, I began to take a longer look at what was available via the hub. And for me, like, it's become my sort of Monday morning, like, 5 o'clock routine where I sign on. The orders are due that morning, but I finally sign on and I do most of my orders on Monday, like many chefs and cooks. And it's like turned into such a treat for me. I love looking at it. And I actually this week for the first time I ordered on Friday because I was trying to get those eggs. No one has eggs right now. So you know, truth be told, we don't really sell a lot of produce at Mini Factory. We sell a lot of bagged greens. People love that. People love eggs. And a lot of it is I put out bunches of kale and chard every week, and I'm going to continue to do that to be a spot for people to come to. But the other thing that was happening was the menu at Mini Factory has continued to expand as people's appetites have expanded past potatoes and biscuit sandwiches. And I found myself wanting a greater variety of food, or especially produce, because that's really what we focus on at Mini Factory. Is vegetable and fruit driven food. And I love Footprint Farm, and I'm so lucky to offer their product year round. But the hub just opens up so many other possibilities with who they're working with. So that's been part of the treat, lots of access. And then the other thing I was doing is I was driving up to Burlington a lot and cross-docking. I learned that how to do that, especially from Keith, who's in the building here. From Flatlander Farm, but I'd be going up there to connect with Myers, who was coming in from the other side of the state. I was also connecting with Food Connects, and now increasingly I have to make those trips way less, which is a net positive for me. So love the hub.
And now we've got Hannah Sessions from Blue Ledge Farm.
So it's wonderful that all of you came out, and I also want to give a shout out to Susan Smiley, who I feel like has been a stalwart, and Jonathan Corcoran. Those are two folks that I know from the beginning. So amazing. So I remember talking to Lindsey back in 2020. I said, Lindsey, I just had a cooler. I just need a cooler to drop my stuff, and then people could come and pick it up and bring it elsewhere. And so we started thinking about that. But to watch the growth of ACORN has been really, really miraculous and incredible. Greg and I are fortunate to have a three-pronged involvement with ACORN. So we sell our cheese on the online marketplace and have seen tremendous growth of sales through that. We use a cooler as a drop ship, so we are able to access markets all over the state and New England, down to, I think, directly to Boston every week. But also we're consumers on the online marketplace. And I'm a little bit infamous for sort of over committing in my purchasing on the online marketplace, but I really recommend it to everyone in this room. So Greg and I last year as consumers, we had the 25-pound carrot challenge. And our kids are off in college now and elsewhere, so it's just Greg and myself. And two people, we did not waste a single carrot. Yeah. So sometimes if you build it, you will eat it. I'd encourage everyone to do that. Thank you, Lindsey.
We also went with the 25-pound carrots and beets, and we juiced the hell out of it. Really good. Kept us healthy. Okay, so now I'll invite Jonathan Corcoran up, chair of our board and one of the original founders of ACORN. He's going to launch our annual appeal.
Bear with me here. It's all here somewhere there. Wow. It's amazing. Well, thank you all for coming out this evening to help ACORN celebrate its 20th anniversary and the inauguration of ACORN Food Hub 2.0. My name is Johnny Corcoran. I am one of the founders and the current board chair of the ACORN network. It's been a long journey getting here, and so I'm feeling very, very grateful to all the wonderful people who volunteered over the years and gifted their resources to this important work, and to move this forward through the years. It's been a long journey. I'd also like to thank Lindsey Berk and the ACORN board for their extraordinary leadership, courage, and hard work. Over the last 5 years, especially, we almost lost ACORN in 2020 because we couldn't do the guide and we couldn't do the tour. So we had basically no money. And so it's been an amazing journey, kind of going from death back to life. And here we are. This ACORN is growing into a great oak. Looking ahead, we need to keep growing our staffing capacity to better market our producers, work with more buyers, and make more local deliveries. We want to serve our local institutions like our schools, the college, the retirement homes by developing forward contracts for our growers, which will incentivize them to increase local food production. We'd also like to build on our experience with pharmacy to develop and pilot an aggregated full diet CSA which we will begin hopefully offering this next year. So we can't do any of this without you, and I really mean that because grants won't help us fund staffing. We really count on our community to donate and help us grow ACORN into the life-giving tree that it really wants to be. Tonight marks the launch of our 2024 annual appeal to raise $50,000 by year end. These are just a few ideas here of what different donation amounts help fund. Your contributions are tax deductible and everyone matters, no matter the size. Thank you for your generosity and continuing support of our pioneering work to bring to life our long-term vision of healthy communities, thriving communities, nourished by living soils, plants, and animals, stewarded by our growers for the mutual benefit of the circle of life to which we all belong. Thank you.
So now would be a great time if anyone needs to use the bathroom, porta potty, bathroom, grab another drink. We're going to transition over to the storytelling part of the evening. So I'd invite all the storytellers, if you're kind of sitting towards the front, that would be great. We just are going to take like a 5-minute break and then we'll reconvene. Thanks. We're going to proceed with our storytelling part of the evening. May I introduce to you Lila, our outreach and programs coordinator. Lila Krugman.
Hey everyone, I already started it, don't worry. So we are going to journey into a really exciting portion of the evening, which is the storytelling portion. I just have a bit of an introduction. As we draw inspiration from movement organizers who came before us, tonight we choose to orient around a quote from Winona LaDuke, an activist, economist, author, one of the world's most tireless and charismatic leaders on issues related to climate change, indigenous rights, human rights, green and rural economies, grassroots organizing, local foods, alternative sources of energy, and the priceless value of clean water over a career spanning nearly 40 years of activism. Winona says, "There is no social change fairy, there is only change made by the hands of individuals." So, rather than showcasing one keynote speaker tonight, as we have in the past, we've invited folks from across the food shed to share stories on showing up. Whether they speak about how they're showing up or how their communities have shown up for them is a matter of personal choice. It is our hope that you'll leave feeling inspired and ready to continue showing up wherever you're called. If you need to leave before we're finished, just because it's like, that's the exit, if you go back past the bathroom, like through the door, you can exit through the warehouse. We just ask you to do that so that you're not creating traffic while people are speaking. Okay, really excited for this. First up, we have Henry. And Henry Landenberger lives on Snake Mountain in Weybridge, Vermont, where he helps his family tend their homestead and perennial plant nursery. As a 7-year-old burgeoning farmer, he recently harvested his very first crop of fall radishes, and he enjoys caring for his family's flock of hens. He will be joining us tonight to tell the uplifting story of a new hen named Goldie, who recently joined the flock.
Once upon a time, I was at a play date, but that is not the point. I came home. The point is, I came home from the play date with a chicken. And that chicken was named Goldie. And my mom didn't know about this, so when she saw this, she was like, "Hey, what's in that box, Henry?" And then I said, "A chicken," and she was like, "Well, we can't have a chicken." And so then I explained the story, which I will right now, and it started like this. she lived at the person's house that I had recently had a play date with. And well, they told us that we had okay. The people who lived at the place that I recently had a play date with had a chicken, and it had a bunch of other chickens with it in a flock, and the other ones died, and so sadly, and so they needed us to bring that one to our home, and so we did, and so we took the chicken Goldie up to the chicken coop, and the first week the other chickens did not like it. It did not like the other chickens, and so it's sadder than you'd think. It could not sleep in the chicken coop. It literally could not sleep. It had to run to the barn every night and sleep there. And so that's why every night we have to go fish it out of the barn. And it usually went behind a board and I had a very small head. So I was the only one who could fit in there. And so I had to squeeze in there and then somehow grab the chicken, which was not easy. And so once we got the chicken every night, we took it back up, and it slept there because it knew it couldn't go back there. We would just have to move it again, and it didn't go back, which is good. And it. Oh yeah. So after those 5 days, we went up to the chicken coop to feed them, and then we were like, wait, we have 9 chickens, and we had 8 before, and so Goldie must be here, and we realized that they actually liked each other now.
That was the best start ever. Now we're going to join up Thelma. Thelma Gomez is a farm worker, activist, and organizer with migrant justice. Thelma came to Vermont from Tabasco, Mexico as a teenager to work on a dairy farm. She's now an organizer with migrant justice where she supports workers fighting for human rights and economic justice.
Hola, hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Yeah. Hello everybody, how are you? Good. Ok, pues voy a comenzar contándoles un poco de mi historia. Yo soy del sureste de México, de Tabasco, un lugar muy caliente, no tanto como el infierno, pero más o menos. Okay, I'll start by telling you a little bit of my story. I'm from southwestern Tabasco, where it's really hot. It's not quite as hot as hell, but almost. Cuando yo era muy chiquita, mi papá y mi abuelo cultivaban sandías. Entonces toda mi familia se dedicaba a cultivar sandías muy grandes. Yo era muy pequeña, pero recuerdo que eran sandías como demasiado grandes de lo que puedo imaginar. When I was little, my dad and my grandfather, they grew watermelons, and they were huge. I was really little, but I remember that those watermelons were massive. Algo de mi parte favorita era que después de que los grandes camiones llevaban la sandía,
toda la comunidad venía y se llevaba todas las sandías que quedaban, o sea que era algo para toda la comunidad.
And one of my favorite parts was that when the big trucks would come and take away the harvested watermelons, everything that was left was for the community. That was fruit that we all shared.
Años después, mi familia ya no podía seguir cultivando sandía. Con los años, el agua se infectó, la tierra estaba muy contaminada, pasaban grandes pipas de gas, entonces era casi imposible criar una sola sandía del tamaño del que estábamos acostumbrados a ver.
But years later, we were no longer able to continue cultivating these watermelons. The water on our land got polluted and the soil there became contaminated by big pipes that were going through our land.
Años después, mi abuelo, mi papá empezaron a buscar otros métodos para poder trabajar y sostener a nuestra familia porque era nuestro ingreso, la agricultura. Y después mi familia empezó a migrar al norte de México.
And so years later, my dad and my grandfather started to look for other jobs and other types of income because this was really our livelihood, farming. And that was when we started to look for jobs in the north of Mexico.
Años después nos dimos cuenta que seguíamos sufriendo, como ya no podíamos trabajar las tierras, se nos hacía casi imposible. Y un día mi papá y yo decidimos venir a Vermont. Mi papá ya había trabajado, bueno, ya había escuchado cómo era el trabajo de la agricultura y creo que por la experiencia que él tenía en el campo se le hacía también algo importante venir a trabajar a Vermont.
And so years later, we still weren't able to support the family through agriculture on our land. And that's when my dad and I decided to come to Vermont. We had heard that there was work here on farms. And since this was our way of life in Mexico, we decided to come here and try that.
Cuando llegué, recuerdo que tenía 16 años. Y se me hizo un lugar súper frío. Yo ya dije, Vermont Tabasco es muy caliente. Y lo primero que vi era justo en noviembre, cumplo 13 años. Entonces recuerdo justo llegar y yo decía, esto es súper frío. Y todos decían, apenas está empezando.
And when I came, I was only 16 years old. And I thought it was really, really cold here. I'd heard it was cold, but Tabasco is so hot. And I got here in November. So that means I'm just completing 13 years here. And I thought, it's freezing here. It's so cold. And everyone told me, it's only going to get colder.
Entonces comencé con mi papá a trabajar en un rancho, ordeñando vacas. Pero era algo muy diferente a lo que estábamos acostumbrados en México. Empezaba a sentirme muy sola, muy triste, extrañaba a mi mamá, a mis hermanitos. Casi no veía a mi papá, aunque vivíamos juntos. Estaba más tiempo con las vacas que con mi papá.
And so I started working in a dairy farm with my dad. We were milking cows. And this work was really different. And the life was really different for me here. I felt really alone and I really missed my family. And even though I was living with my dad, I hardly saw him because we were working so much.
Empecé a experimentar algunas experiencias dentro del trabajo que eran como muy difíciles para mí siendo mujer, siendo muy joven. Y sabía que habían cosas que no estaban bien, pero no podía describirlas ni llamarlas por su nombre.
And I started to have some difficult experiences as a woman, as a young person, things that I felt weren't right, but I didn't know how to name them or how to talk about them or what to do.
Casi no conocía gente de mi comunidad migrante, ni sabía que había casi gente alrededor mía. Recuerdo que una vez alguien fue a mi casa y me habló de justicia migrante. Entonces yo no me importaba, como estaba yo tan cansada que no puse atención a lo que estaba hablando ni quiénes eran.
At that point, I really didn't know hardly anyone, and I didn't know that there were other people from the migrant community nearby. One day someone came to my house and they were talking to me about this group migrant justice. And I was just so tired out from work, I hardly even paid attention.
Pero hubo algo que me llamó la atención y siempre es una historia muy chistosa porque era mi compañera Natalia, empezó a decir como, sí, ven, tendremos una asamblea y habrá comida mexicana. Y en ese momento dije, oh, güey, sí, tengo que ir.
And something that really caught my attention about that conversation, and I'll always remember it, is that my friend Natalia was talking about how there's going to be this community assembly, we're all going to get together, there's going to be Mexican food, and I said, oh, there's going to be Mexican food on that.
Y recuerdo que fui a esa asamblea aquí en Middlebury hace 13 años, justo cuando llegué. Y recuerdo que empecé a escuchar justo esas cosas que yo no había podido nombrar, entenderlas y poder saber que había algo que estaba pasando que no estaba bien. Y que algo que toda mi vida voy a recordar y que fue un antes y un después, fue cuando escuché decir, no importa de dónde, qué parte del mundo vengas, tú tienes derecho.
And I remember I went to that community assembly and it was right here in Middlebury 13 years ago. And I started to listen to hear other people talking there. And I started to hear other people talking about some of the challenges that I was facing, the things that I was experiencing. And something that I'll always remember is that I heard someone say, it doesn't matter what part of the world you're from, we all have rights.
Y desde entonces empecé a entender que tenía una responsabilidad con mi comunidad. Y cuando empecé a ver la gente que llegaba y que era gente vecina a mi comunidad de México, que no había visto por muchos años, o gente de otros estados, empecé a darme cuenta como, ok, tenemos que hacer algo con lo que está pasando.
And that's when I started to understand, to realize that I had and I have a responsibility with my community, people that I met here who are neighbors back in Tabasco and Mexico who I hadn't seen in years, and other people from other parts of the country.
Y desde entonces empecé a involucrarme en justicia migrante y a ser parte de la voz, poder ir a educar a mismos trabajadores, cuáles eran nuestros derechos, las cosas que estaban pasando. Y así por más de una década, mi experiencia organizando a mi propia comunidad ha sido súper importante en mi propio desarrollo y poder conectar a la Thelma de cuando era niña y crecía sandías, a la Thelma de ahora que organiza a los trabajadores en los ranchos lecheros.
And that's when I started to get involved to educate other community members about our rights. And it's been more than a decade now. And it's been this huge impact for myself in my life, in my development, my education, and thinking about how my work connects to that little girl who grew up growing watermelons.
Y sí, pues justicia migrante ha sido algo muy importante para mi comunidad, algo que nos ha empoderado para luchar y entender el trabajo que hacemos aquí en la industria lechera en Vermont, que hablamos de la comida sustentable, hablamos del orgánico y de lo importante, pero no olvidar también dónde estamos los trabajadores puestos en estas conversaciones.
Migrant justice has been a really important, something really important for my community in empowering us. And so when we talk about sustainability and we talk about organics and food, it's so important to also remember the workers and the hands that are behind the food.
Sí, esa es mi historia. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Gracias, for that incredible story. Next we have Caitlin. I don't know what you look like, but I hope you're here somewhere. Hi, Caitlin. Caitlin is a graphic designer, visual artist, and poet from Leicester, Vermont. In past lives, she's been a vegetable farmer, worked for the Northeast
Organic Farming Association, NOFA, as they say, and done most of the jobs there are in food service. These days, her food system work includes a very modest garden, enthusiastic patronage of local farms, and the Abolition Kitchen project that is the subject of her story. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. It's an honor to be here today, and I'm going to work from notes because my short-term memory is not great. This isn't a story about the power of local food so much as the power of food used locally, though I think a fair amount of local food is involved as well. So I'm going to sit down. In the summer of 2020, there was a lot going on, as you may remember. One of the things taking up a lot of space on the news and in my mind was an attempt at a racial reckoning in a way that hadn't happened before in my lifetime. I've been on the executive committee of the Rutland area NAACP since its founding 8 years ago, and that summer we were really busy. We were fielding media requests, answering questions, trying to accommodate the sudden influx of interest from well-meaning people and businesses who wanted somebody to tell them what to do to get it right. And not everyone who reached out to us was well-meaning. One of my jobs for the NAACP is to manage social media. And that summer, I spent a lot more time than usual logging hate messages for the Attorney General's office to review. Through this work, I had the privilege of becoming friends with some of our community's Black leaders, and my Black friends were exhausted and grieving from the battery of news about police violence and the seemingly unending series of resultant deaths. And now we're being asked professionally and personally to educate and reassure this mostly white community. Plus, there was a pandemic on, and that was hitting communities of color harder in Vermont, just as it was everywhere in the rest of the country. If you are wondering where food is coming in, we're almost there. In June of 2020, there was a protest for George Floyd in Rutland. And in the days leading up to it, I felt that grief and exhaustion from my friends. And I knew that they would be there all day, organizing and speaking and watching for potential violence. And I thought, what can I do? What do we do for friends who are suffering and grieving? We bring them food. Food is love. So I called some white friends, some of whom are in this room right now, and put together dinner for 5 Black women and their families. Somebody made soup, I think, and somebody baked bread, and there were apples, and I don't remember what else. And I brought it to my fighting, grieving, exhausted friends at the protest. And then the next week, nothing had changed, really. So we did it again. And I dropped food at the houses of each family. And then the next week, we did it again. And at first, it was awfully disorganized. But after a few weeks, we set up a spreadsheet with little lines for a main dish and a side dish and a dessert. And we had a list of emails of nice white people who wanted to help. And pretty soon, we added a few families in Middlebury and North as well to deliver to. My friend Joanna, who is in this room, would gather food from Purks in Middlebury and bring it to me in Leicester, and we would spend a while boxing it up for all the different families, and I'd drive it down to Rutland, sometimes adding more food from cooks down there, and she would drive it back to Middlebury, and each week we would deliver our meals. We kept it up weekly for about 2 years, and then we switched to a monthly delivery, which continues today. The idea was and is to make a concrete, useful gesture of care. To say, in action, I see your labor and your pain, and to make one small thing easier. Think of it maybe as the opposite of a microaggression, right? Those seemingly minor social slights that people with marginalized identities suffer regularly. A micro-compassion or a micro-solidarity. A small thing regularly to say, you're valued, you are seen, you belong. Food as love. It was and is hard sometimes as a white person to find the right place for ourselves in the struggle for equity, a struggle that has recently gotten again more urgent. And this is only one of the smallest of partial answers. It does not in itself do anything much to address discrimination or injustice. It does not touch systemic racism. It doesn't make right anything. in the long history of wrongs done against people of color. But when we were feeding the president of the NAACP during the summer of 2020, we were not directly addressing racism, but the president of the NAACP spent her days fighting racism in the courts and the legislature, in the schools and workplaces. And I think it wasn't nothing to give her a delicious meal and the knowledge that there are people out there supporting her. So it makes one small thing easier for those families we serve, some of whom are on the front lines of that fight and all of whom feel its effects every day. Think of it maybe also as a kitchen table reparations. Some of the labor and money, you know as well as I do that groceries aren't cheap, of white people going to nourish Black folks for no other reason really than it's something we can do and we're doing it. And to be clear, this is very much a group effort. I almost never cook anymore myself. I manage a spreadsheet and I drive to Rutland and I send emails when emails need to be sent. We've got a handful of dedicated folks who cook every month, some of whom are in this room. And Joanne and I still meet to parcel out the food for each family. And she takes it up to families in the north and I drive it down to Rutland. Most of our cooks have never met the people that they're cooking for regularly every week or every month. In this way, I think that's also an exercise against white supremacy culture, which insists on recognition and reward. What does it mean to do something effortful and expensive and kind again and again, quietly, if not anonymously? We lost some people early on when it became clear that this wasn't a project with a lot of applause built in. And some people have told me that they took that as an opportunity to reflect on their own expectations and commit to just doing the work, as they say. In that same vein, I almost never talk about this project. And I was honestly reluctant to do it tonight. I always worry I'm gonna sound like a white savior jerk patting myself on the back. But I think at this moment, it's worth every way we can expand our concepts of solidarity, community, and mutual aid. I like to think now of the cumulative effect of knowing that one night a week or a month for 4.5 years, dinner was just going to magically appear, made with love, made just for you. So I offer this story as one example of one person looking around, seeing one thing they could do, finding people to do it with them, and making it something small but real. There's a saying in the activist world to fight with the tools that are uniquely yours. I had friends who needed support and friends who could give it, and I connected the two. Really, that's all. But I hope that we all look around in the coming months and years, see a need, find a solution, and connect the two however we can.
Thank you, Caitlin, for that incredible story. I'm sorry we're running a bit over, folks, but there's still 2 more great stories. So if you can stick around, I highly encourage you to. Next, we have Megan. Megan Brakely is a transracially adopted mother, daughter, sister, friend, niece, and auntie. She strives to be an attendant student of the natural world. She lives in Middlebury and pinches herself every day that she gets to support the students who power the Knoll, the college's student farm. Come on up.
Thank you. Thanks to all the fantastic ACORN staff for making this happen. It's a joy and an honor to be here with you today. So I'm telling the story from the perspective of a parent. Being a parent is living in a positivist, constructivist mindset. Someone or some people are actually constantly asking me, or parents, to help them understand the world around them and co-create its meaning. Yesterday, I was driving my kiddos to a birthday party at the trampoline park. And it turns out that the first grade is doing a unit on money. And my 7-year-old wants to know if we can make the money at home, like just print it out and voila, money. So in comes the concept of the mint, and it causes some initial confusion because we do have prolific mint reproducing itself in the backyard. It's very special. So lots of different types of mints. And the almost 9-year-old who is running a fledgling egg business and Quick to point out that paper money has holograms and there are all these technical details that make it more than just a piece of paper. So I have a captive audience in the car and I just go there. So we start saying, okay, paper money is just one representation. Before it was paper, people used shells and stones and objects from the natural world. But money really only means something if people believe in it. Otherwise, you're right, it's just a piece of paper. So now we're really getting into it. There also has to be a common set of beliefs, and everyone has to agree to what its value is. So then the 9-year-old tells me about this story where a poet has come to their 3rd grade class this fall and shared his time teaching poetic structure to the group. And she was so enamored with this poet that she offered to compensate him in her eggs. Told him all about Hazel's happy hens. And I wanted to know how many eggs that was worth. And then I was talking about a friend who was an attorney, and that attorney's friend, an hour of their time cost $300. And the 7-year-old chimes in from the back. So what exactly does a lawyer do? We put that on hold. So how we value time can be different depending on who you are. Aha, the 7-year-old says, money doesn't matter. Money is stupid. And so in my heart of hearts, I don't necessarily disagree. As a part farmer, part educator, my work is often about a deep reorientation to what does hold value, to help connect that sensibility straight to the source, the earth, the land, the water, our neighbors, and all of our interconnections. To be part of the abundance, as poet Lee Young Lee writes, to carry within us an orchard. And at the same time, the deep responsibility and actionable reciprocity that this abundance then requires of us. If our basic needs could be met, then perhaps he's right. No money is required for us to flourish. So then I'm imagining my kiddo from the comfort of our minivan in clean clothes that fit, carrying every privilege that he could in his 1st grade classroom, lobbing this one at his deeply capable but also somewhat overwhelmed teacher in these most overwhelming times in the week following having to explain the election results. And I say, okay, it's all right to think about that, but you can't say that in class. Why not? Good question. Because talking about money is uncomfortable, I say. Money can be a deep source of stress for people, for families, not having enough, having to work all the time, not having the things that require money, like food and house. We have to be mindful. So we're barreling north at 60 miles per hour on 116, past barns falling down, and our backseat observations turn to noticing a tired old barn. And the backseat figures that this disarray must have been caused by an earthquake. How else would it be in such a state? And then the switch clicks. Just because somebody doesn't have money doesn't mean they don't have value. Everyone has value, and we have to honor that. So this theme of showing up has had me pondering on what it means to show up, how we do so, and who for, and also on behalf of whom. And how do we show up for those who don't bring their voices in on their own? Our institutions are crumbling. Establishments that codify, protect, and uphold our human and planetary rights. This is nothing new, of course, but perhaps this political moment will crystallize us into action. Because establishments are just like the idea of money. They only exist with our belief in them. We have to show up. And how do we show up to do the work that has to be done in order to reorganize and fix the broken institutions from within them? I believe that we have to trust and that we have to be trustworthy. So for me, that begged the question, what do I trust these days? And Here's a little list. I trust that every minute of the day that I spend outside makes me feel better. I trust what my body knows, what I can sniff out, what I can feel on my skin, soak in my gut, get written on my skin by the sun, just like I trust that your body knows things as well. I trust that as soon as I sit down to write this piece or pick up an instrument in my house, a curious soul will pop up out of nowhere to help me. I trust that curiosity, not as a voyeur or a spectator, but real, humble curiosity paired with genuine action to open our hearts, relinquish tired, outdated scripts, and rediscover power, may help us mend our institutions. I trust that we each have different work to do and that showing up is going to look different for every one of us. I trust that reliability can be reciprocal and that leaving space to trust, it means leaving space to trust that others are doing the best that they can and to extend grace. I trust that remembering is how we get smarter, and maybe graciousness is how we get kinder. I also trust that if we don't trust each other, we get nowhere. And so how do we show up, hold our focus, and work together to build trust in the relentless noise of our times? I often turn to this snippet of a Thomas Merton quote. There's a pervasive form of modern violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of the activist neutralizes their work. It destroys the fruitfulness of their work because it kills the root of inner wisdom which makes work fruitful. I trust that we have real work to do and that we can do it, and that peace can be possible when we believe in the value of every single one of us and every single thing. As each of us shows up for the work that only we can do in our many parts, we will find the value of us all in the whole when we're headed in the common direction. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, we have V. You've already heard from V tonight, but she's gonna tell us a great story about the factory, right? Yeah. And V Smiley Preserves. I haven't heard it yet. I just guessed. Here you go.
I'll try to shorten this up a little bit, and I actually didn't write anything narrative out. I just made some notes at the co-op. I thought, I know this is a little bit of a night of talking about money, and it's still somewhat fresh in my memory of going through this extended period of raising money and trying to make this ambitious project have a home, have an audience, and have a physical place, and to flip that sign to open. It kind of gets, there's sort of some minutia to it, but I'll try to speed it up a little bit. But for me, it kind of, the first thing I thought of today was that for a long time, I didn't come home to Vermont. In my early 20s, I finally came out to my parents, and it was a gnarly process. I figured it would be. My father was very unwelcoming. And for me, it was the end of that relationship. And I stopped coming home. But I thought about this place all the time, and my mom stayed in contact. And food, talking about ACORN, talking about who was farming, what was happening, the market in Virgins that they were trying out at the Kennedy place. So that kept us connected while I was working in a mixture of arts and food, starting in my early 20s. And that saw me in Los Angeles, and then I moved to Washington State And in 2012, my dad passed away. And that's when the idea of coming back here really opened up for me. And going through the process of opening Mini Factory was such a long process and involved so much writing and so much kind of examination of why I was trying to do this thing in all the various places that I tried to do it, which was about 9 different locations over about 5 years. And so for me, a big driver has been about coming home and finding community and healing from a pretty tough moment in my early 20s. And food and serving it is a huge part of that for me. Mini Factory, very personal project, and really began to take shape as sort of something that would have this arts element and be a community hub and serve food and really celebrate preserves and how to present them in food. And meanwhile, I grew up on this farm in New Haven on River Road. And I started to have this worry also in my early 20s that it was going to go away. And there was sort of this chance for healing was going to go away. So I began to set out at that same time, stewing, like how could we keep this piece of land with the family? I had older parents and they were actively trying to figure out what to do with it. So for a long time, I thought I was going to be a farmer, or I thought we were going to start an art community there. And finally, I was like, well, we'll farm and we'll have a restaurant there. And then when I finally got there in 2015, having already started my jam business, I encountered, the world of zoning and permits and water usage and septic and starting to understand the costs of all these things and making the dream happen. And also was experiencing living close to my mom and being in partnership with my partner, Amy, and being in Vermont around a lot of family and realizing that it probably made more sense for us as a unit to end up on Main Street and to try to do business and do the work in a town rather than on the farm for both regulatory and personal reasons. And so began my search for trying to find a space where I could manufacture these Smiley preserves and sort of show off how small batch artisan manufacturing was being done, invite people into the process, and then also produce a product that showcased it and made a case for it on your table. And so I think as I said, about 9 different locations, multiple almost business partnerships with various local folks. And then I stumbled upon this incredible seeming opportunity to partner with Shack's Cider. And that was just before COVID was about to happen. And I designed the downstairs, shot is somewhere here, helped me through that first part of the process. And then COVID hit, but it was still seemed like we were game on. And all of a sudden I was facing this, I don't know, $400,000 project. But I was like, I can do this. I can raise the money for this. I hired someone to help me build this business plan that was going to facilitate a complete build out in a completely raw space. And then I stumbled into this sort of morass that is raising money. And it's this process where you get quotes and then you plug that into your business plan, and then you start going out to try to raise money. And then there's a whole sort of progression of people that you can talk to in theory. And maybe they tell you that your business plan is bullshit, you'll never do those sales. And then you go back and you have to look at it again and make it more feasible. And then meanwhile, all the financials have started to shift because everything's starting to cost more and the cost of lumber is going up. And at the same time, I was a total newbie. I was a woman and I couldn't get anyone to call me back. I couldn't, just to get a contractor, even take a meeting with me, let alone even do the cost out. It was really, and so the process just wore on and on and on and on. And I was about 14 months in and finally Shack's was like, we're putting a deadline on you. And after that, we're gonna walk away. And at the same time, my jam business was going like wild because it was COVID and people were at home and people were buying a lot of jam and lots of CPG products, and lots of people grew, and we grew a lot. And so I was kind of getting the boot from where I was, and I was facing, I thought, sort of losing my jam business, which I always think of as my baby. And it's also this message in a jar for this business that I was planning to open that goes out across the country via distributors and e-commerce and all the avenues that we built. I built through years of travel and shows and submissions and, you know, all the work of just building a business. So I thought I was about to lose View Smelly Preserves, and all of a sudden I heard this sort of whisper that the Bristol Bakery, which was Bristol Cliffs at the time, was for sale. And so I went and met the owner and started another like kind of treacherous part of the business process, which is trying to buy a business and negotiate all of that. But fortunately, I'd already had all this other work in place around funding, and I was able to sort of shift a lot of that into that new project. It was really a matter of getting through that negotiation. And that, in terms of the community, was this absolutely transformative moment. It was something that I never would have contemplated before. I remember a couple of years after I moved here, I think the Otter Creek Bakery was for sale, and I remember reading the details, and I would think it was, you know, you work there and then learn the recipes, and then gradually you take it over. And I was like, that's wild. Like, I was coming from a city where, you know, most people want to start their own thing. They want to do, like, they have an idea, they want to make their mark, and they want to do their own thing. And I couldn't wrap my head around, why would you buy an existing business and then just recreate what was there? But at this point, I was 5 years into realizing that space in our very rural area is so precious, and we have the chance to move into or have the possibility of doing business or making food for someone, just cooking dinner for someone, is sometimes only at like a generationally available opportunity that you can just sort of stumble into. And I did, with being in this moment primed, all this work being done to buy the bakery. And then even then, you know, I still don't really have the pieces of who was going to do the build out, because I did want to change it. I thought it needed to change to be up to date and serve slightly different food, and to serve more local food, and to sell local food. And that was the big switch for me. So I went from no one would return my phone calls to just really extended timelines to starting to reach out to people. And already the whisper had started, you know, the bakery, so much whispering, so much whispering. I was going to take down the mural, and I was going to destroy the space. And, but, you know, also people were excited. And I had this unforgettable experience of talking to someone who was a builder. I needed a plumber, I needed an electrician, I needed a painter, I needed sort of a general contractor, or a carpenter. I needed a carpenter first. And I picked up the phone with Lonnie Edwards, and if you ever need a tree house, he's your person. And I barely had to say like 10 words, and he was just like, I'm in. I'd love to take part. And, you know, around that same time, Noah Hahn, who had started his own cafe years ago, he reached out to me. I love coffee. I want to help you. I can help you build your beverage program. And at the same time, I was buying this building that was owned by a former business, Connor and Buck. And so their whole network opened up to me. The plumber picked right up, was there the next week. Same thing with the electrician. It was just like unbelievable feeling. And that's what allowed us to open just a couple of months after I bought the business. Record time, I felt like. And I did make a little shout out list I wanted to mention. I feel like at the top of the list is my partner and my family. You know, the space was in pretty rough shape when I got to it. My sister Maura, who's here today, we did I don't know, hundreds of hours of scrubbing probably. So Maura was so huge. My mom, I mean, yeah, it's hard to put into words with my mom, but okay, I got to get to my shout out list here. The other thing that I had done was I did do a crowdfund, and I had very purposely started my jam business in Seattle, far, far away from Vermont, in anticipation of building this business one day, because I wanted the shine of the city, and I wanted everyone who I cooked with or met at the farmers market in Seattle to maybe one day come to Vermont and visit us here, and to build those connections. So when I did do a crowdfund as just a tiny little piece of the overall financial chunk that needed to be put together, the crowdfund was part of it. And I know there's people in the room like Sarah, who contributed to that, many other people. So shout out to them. Keith, we wanted to do this grocery program, and I was fortunate to be connected to Keith Drinkwine at Flatlander Farm, who is a buyer at multiple spots, but Healthy Living right now. And he built out the whole grocery side and how to do margins and what to charge for olive oil. So that was pivotal. Yeah, and just all the trades folks that showed up just so quickly. And also you, because so many of you come in, and I'm so thankful. And I hope you keep coming on and come in on weekdays, because that's when we really need you. Thank you.
Just realizing we didn't script this last bit. So thank you everyone who's spoken tonight, who's shown up in all the various ways, and we really urge you to continue showing up for our community in the weeks, months, and years to come. We have your emails for those of you who signed up online and in person today, so we'll probably follow up with an email. Please don't delete it immediately, maybe read it. And other than that, I don't have anything else to say. Thank you so much for showing up tonight, and it's been really, really a pleasure to see you all in person. Have a great holiday season and solstice season, and stay warm and go eat some delicious foods.